with me tonight. I hope that you're hearing me well. We're going to continue our topic from last week. Again, happy Monday. Hope that you're seeing me and hearing me well again. Thank you for joining. Our topic last week was Frontline, and we're continuing in that vein. So this is Frontline Part 2, Bared Fruit. I hope that everyone is doing well in this season of social distancing and being alone together, quarantined, or just staying in the house, working from home, keeping our front line, our individuals that have to go out, our essentials, the doctors, nurses, grocery stores, police officers, home health aides, all those that have to be out, have to go out. Let's keep them lifted up. Pray for their health and their strength, their endurance. Pray for covering and protection over them. We lift them up and pray that they stay safe. That we find laughter and joy in the moment, and spending time with family. I spoke to some of my students and their challenges. They're missing school. They're used to being at school, and now with school, all of the family is together, and most of us are not used to spending that much time with the family every day, day in and day out. And so for some, it's a challenge. So I challenge you to find fun things to do, to make one another laugh and encourage one another and uplift one another. Be nice to one another. Say nice things. Try to start the day with saying something nice. This is a great time. I hope that everyone that took our gratitude challenge, when we did our 21-day gratitude challenge, that you have continued. I have continued every morning, starting off with positivity and self-encouragement and identifying what I'm grateful for. The challenge was to identify 6 things of minimum of 6 things that you're grateful for, and writing those down and taking it with you to reflect back on during your day. Put it on a sticky or in a book that you carry with you, and just keeping that. So that just came back to mind, although it's not our topic today. That was on my heart. So be grateful. Be grateful today. Be grateful every day. Start your day off with gratitude, giving thanks for being in the land of the living, for breathing breath, for having sight and vision and mobility. Little things, the simple things, but great things in the same vein that we often take for granted. Let us not take it for granted. So in the continuation of our topic, Frontline, we've been talking about fruit, what type of fruit we are, bearing fruit, that we are fruit of the tree of the Creator. God is the Creator. He created all things, and we are part of His creation, and so therefore we are His fruit. Feeling a little thirsty, excuse me. So we are the fruit of the Creator. And so we've moved from that vein. And last week we were in Romans 12 and talking about being on the front line and those that are in our immediate circle and what our role is. How do we play out our role? What type of responsibility do we take on? What role do we play within our immediate circles, within our family, Are we head of household? What is your role? And how does that play out? And what responsibility comes with the role that you have? And how much of it do you own? So, kind of highlighting and talking around that. And tonight, we're going to use Esther. We're going to talk about Esther, and so we're going to be in Esther chapter 4 for those of you that have your Bible or your Bible app and want to follow along. We will be in Esther chapter from 14 down, but I'm going to go back to the beginning. And even before I go back to the beginning of that, let me give the backdrop. The backdrop of the story of Esther in relation to this chapter. Mordecai had a niece named Esther, and Mordecai heard that, well, the whole town knew that the King Xerxes, had beheaded his wife. He had beheaded his wife for not obeying him. And so he sent out the word, and he had a ball looking for a new wife. And so when Mordecai heard this, he prepared his niece to be among those that would be selected from. So she was prepared and primed with all of the sweet smelling savory oils, and however women were prepared in that day to go before the king to possibly be selected as his new wife. And so King Esther was prepared and stood out. Her beauty stood out among all of the women, and she was chosen, and she became the wife of King Xerxes. So now Esther is in the house. She is the queen. But the queen usually only goes to the king when she's called. And that's another story. We won't go there. But as the king, she has some level of power, and she has wisdom. And so let's focus on the side and the role of Esther as a woman in this century or this era, where decision making, when it came to all of that. So Mordecai, now as we're coming into chapter 4, there are rumors of Jews being killed. Now they were Jews. However, when Esther was chosen as King Xerxes' wife, that wasn't highlighted, and it wasn't known that Esther was a Jew. And so it kind of was hearing of this plot, this plan to kill the Jews. And so we pick up here in chapter 4 with Mordecai responding to these rumors and preparing himself to appeal to his niece for assistance with this. And so I'll start the beginning of chapter 4. Mordecai talks Esther into helping the Jews. Mordecai found out about everything that had been done. So he tore his clothes. He put on their when they're sad. He sat down in ashes, and those clothes are sackcloth and ashes. He sat down in ashes. Then he went out into the city. He wept out rough clothing in sackcloth, was allowed to go through it. All the Jews were very sad. They didn't eat anything. They wept and cried. Many of them put on the rough clothing people wear when they're sad, which is sackcloth and ashes. They were lying down and in ashes. They did all these things in every territory where the king's IV version, because the language there is a little closer to the King James, but a little bit clearer, and I don't want to lose the essence of the reference and mention. Start again. Mordecai learned of all that had been done. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. Verse 3. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Verse 4. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. Verse 6. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Verse 7. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Verse 8. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Verse 9. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Verse 10. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, verse 11, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. Verse 12. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, verse 13, he sent back this answer: do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. Verse 14. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise for another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Verse 15. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. Verse 17. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. So Mordecai, Esther's uncle, is holding her accountable. He's bringing to her attention that you're not an exception to the rule. And this is going to affect you too, because you are a Jew like me. You come from us. You are a part of us. And if this law is carried out, it's on your head as well. And if you have the opportunity to do something about it and don't do it, is that really what you want to do? So Esther found herself in a position of potential influence, but also of vulnerability. There was a plot in the midst, and she could be the one to stop it. Her uncle Mordecai had challenged her, pretty much told her, "You're not in this position for nothing. Step up. Don't play it safe and think you won't be affected. Exert your power and change this, or someone else will. Someone else may come along and do it, because there's always someone willing to do what you're not willing to do." And so we read it in his own words and what he said, but I'm interpreting it because Esther was on the front line. She was in the middle in one sense, but she was on the front line. And what was part of her front line? She was in the castle. She was in the kingdom. She was the wife of King Xerxes, but there were rules that kind of restricted her from approaching even her husband. But here was her uncle challenging her and holding her accountable for something that she never thought that she would have to do. And she has to make the drastic decision of whether she's going to take on what her uncle is challenging her to do, or if she's going to play it safe. But she realizes that she has a lot to lose as well. She can lose her life one way or the other. She's saying in her response that I could be killed by the king by approaching him, going to him in the courtyard without permission. However, on the other side of that coin, on the flip side, Mordecai is saying, "You're a Jew, my niece. Sister girl, wake up. You can die anyway. So what are you willing to put on the line? Are you willing to put yourself on the line?" And when Esther thought about this, and she came back to her senses, because her uncle was pretty much saying, "You better take those rose-colored glasses off and see the real. Don't get high and mighty up there in the king's house." And so I'm using this as an example in relation to us being on the front line in our immediate circles. What are the roles we play? How do we play them out? Do we step back and play it safe, or do we step up and take chances? Do we take on challenges that's presented to us? How do we make the decision? Here, Esther went through a whole preparation. She told them what to do, and she said that this is what she was going to do in her frontline immediate circle, for everyone to fast, so they're all on the same page. And in numbers, you have strength. And so they stood on one accord, they fasted and prayed in preparation for her to make this known massive violation of going to the king. But she was prayed up, she was covered, they were all on one accord, and so she felt empowered to be able to do this. And she knew that there was a chance that she may not make it, but it was a chance she was willing to take. So what do you stand firm on? Is there anything that you stand firm on that you can't be shaken no matter what happens? Is there something you're willing to do, to give up, to sacrifice for a greater good? Even if you're afraid to do it. Esther took that challenge. She did that in spite of fear, in spite of what could happen, because it was a drastic decision. It was urgent to be done. If she had the opportunity to stop this law being put in place to save her people, she would never know unless she went forth and stood up and took that stand to do it. She pretty much lived in a time where men made these decisions, but she womaned up. Some would say manned up. She womaned up, and she said, if I perish, I perish, but I'm going to see the king. She was empowered by her uncle and by them uniting and standing together to do what needed to be done at any cost. And she found belief in the cause. She believed in what she did. Her uncle had prepared her. She knew what she needed to do, and she did it. And although it doesn't talk about this in verse, in this chapter, you would have to go into the next chapter. But she was able to get the king's attention. She was able to get the king's ear, and she was able to stop the law. So she did save the day. She did save it. So she took that chance, and it was worth it. It was a good outcome. She succeeded in her goal. But if we never take that chance, we'll never know. So we can't always play it safe. We can't play it safe in life. There's a saying that says, believe in something or fall for anything. And there's a couple of different dynamics and ways to say it. Now I'm mixing it up. Okay, I'm gonna leave that one alone. But take a stand for something, believe in what you stand for, and you would usually succeed if you believe wholeheartedly in it. And you stand for it, and it's a fulfilling, purposeful cause, and it's a part of your purpose, it's part of your mission. You are responsible for fulfilling that mission. And so we have to identify and be in tune and be present to what our roles are within our front line. What is it? Are we holding back? Are we blocking progress? Or are we taking on the challenges? Are we knocking down the barriers of fear and stifling? And not to necessarily say be a rule breaker, but to be willing to take the challenge for the greater cause, to achieve the goal that's needed to be achieved. And when it's lined up with our purpose, just got to go back to that. We all have a purpose and a mission, and we've been talking about this as well. Our ordained purpose, our ordained mission, that we have a set plan for our lives that was pre-set for us before entering our mother's wombs, before being birthed, as that seed was created by our Creator. When that seed was formed, our plan was formed with it. Our destiny was set from the end to the beginning. Our plan was set from the end to the beginning, and then we start and live it out and fulfill it. And sometimes we make the journey and make it the mission harder and make the journey longer by taking extra turns. But we still can get to our finish line. We still can get to where we're supposed to go, if we just stay present, if we stay in tune, and if we seek out to have clearer understanding and ask for wisdom to identify what our roles are supposed to be and how we're supposed to fulfill that, fill within those lines of our lane. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Being on the front line and playing out our roles on the front line. And remembering that we are fruit. And so are we going to be sweet fruit? Are we going to be bitter fruit? Are we going to be ripe fruit? Are we ripe for picking? Are we ready to do the work? Let's do the work, people. Let's do the work and enjoy it. So doing it from the heart. When we identify it, it comes from the heart, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like work because something clicks, something lines up, something fits. It fits in, it clicks together like two pieces that have matching edges, or like a puzzle piece being added to the puzzle to create the finished product. That's what our goals should always be, to do, to fulfill and live out our purpose. And have fun doing it. Enjoy it, enjoy it. And when the challenges come, if we kick down those barriers and knock down those walls, it seems hard and challenging in the moment. But at the end of the line, afterwards, when we have those memory stones to stand on and look, it strengthens us. It builds us. It makes us taller because we overcame. We are overcomers. We are overcomers. And challenges come to make us stronger and help to build our character and help us to lead and to be led and fulfill our purpose. So I hope that you've enjoyed this message. Um, there may be a part 3. Right now this was part 2, and I'll see how it goes for next week, if there's something else to add to this. But I'm on this frontline thing. And I feel like it relates to the season that we're in, because we have to be mindful right now of what we do, and be mindful not to put our families in jeopardy, or if we're going out into the world, that we don't bring anything back to our families, our children and our elders, that we are protecting and looking out for one another, and being mindful and listening to directives. And there's so much news and so many reports and so much stuff coming at us, and so we have to decipher through. We have to, as my grandmother used to say, pick sense from nonsense. And what that phrase, my Bayesian grandmother, what that phrase pretty much means is that you may get a lot of information, you get a lot of stuff coming at you, but you have to pick through it and take what's for you. Take not just what makes sense, oh, this sounds right, or I feel good about this, but no, what actually applies to you. You take that and you hone that, and the rest of the stuff, the fluff and the extra and the unsupported stuff that haven't been proven, you take all that stuff and you leave it to the side. You let it fall along on the sideway, and you keep it going, and you keep it moving, and you take what is for you. Not wasting time and energy getting mad and upset, or trying to challenge all of the other stuff. Pick sense from nonsense and take what's for you. So I hope that you will enjoy the rest of your Monday night. Have a blessed rest of your week. Continue to be safe and stay healthy. Take lemon and lime. Drink hot liquids, more warm liquids rather than cold liquids. Do breathing techniques and exercise, and strengthen your immune system. Strengthen your immune system. When you have to go out to the store, you have to go out in public, wear gloves, wear masks. You come back. I'm using a lot of herbs, herbal teas, lime water, almond oil, echinacea, so all of that stuff to make sure that my family system is built up. Do what you know to do. Go back to your roots. Go back to your roots and just build yourselves up. Until next time, I say peace, bless up, and have a good night.